Good afternoon. I'm Scott Campbell, President of the Toms River Education Association. Usually at this time of the year, we would be kicking off the school year with excitement and healthy anxiety. Obviously, things have certainly changed. I had hoped to tell you that we had a memorandum of agreement signed, or at least that we were making great progress. It is extremely disappointing that I cannot do that. We have been told we are family. We have been praised for the way we close school on a Friday with in-person teaching and open on the following Monday with virtual instruction. Something we'd never done before. And yet, here we are without a new collective bargaining agreement. As I have become a bit more nimble with technology, it was suggested that I make a video to update you on the status of negotiations. On Monday, August 31st, at the Board of Education meeting, Bruce Padula, the labor attorney for the Board of Education, gave an update to the Board of Education on the negotiations between the board and the Toms River Education Association. This is unusual. I had asked our team if they had ever seen this before. The veterans on our team had not. While Mr. Padula gave a relatively accurate account of the proceedings, I would like to provide some clarifications. As I detailed in my letter to you on Wednesday, August 26th, we are at impasse. I will get into impasse a little bit later. I'll begin by giving you a chronology of the talks. First, the team is made up of myself, the president of the association, Michael Ayala, who's a technology teacher at Intermediate East, Eric Bruner, a German teacher at High School North, Anthony Despoto, a guidance counselor at Walnut Street Elementary and South Toms River Elementary, Nancy Jubert, a paraprofessional at Intermediate East, Kelly Soma, the head secretary at North Dover Elementary, and Larry Vaca, a guidance counselor at High School South. It's a nice mix. We have 2 members each from the high school level, the intermediate level, and the elementary level. We also have teachers, guidance counselors, a secretary, and a paraprofessional. Just a quick thought on what a good contract would be. A good contract attracts excellent people. A good contract retains those employees. And a good contract motivates your staff to achieve company goals. That's our mission as the negotiating team for TREA. I also want to give you a couple of terms that will help you understand the process. First term is a scattergram. A scattergram lists all of our employees, the amount of money that they make, the various stipends that they might receive. We are entitled by contract to receive a scattergram from the district in October. We use the numbers from the scattergram to make our assessments and to develop our proposals for the contract and to use throughout negotiations. The second thing would be breakage. Breakage is a term that we use that defines the savings to the district based on the retirement of a veteran teacher or staff member and the hiring of a new staff member. For example, if we had a member that retired at the top of the guide and was making $90,000 and was also receiving a $40,000 family medical plan, their cost to the district is approximately $130,000. If you hire a new employee on step 1 and give them an individual coverage, the cost of the district would be approximately $70,000. That means that when you have a veteran retire and you hire a new person, the savings can be up to as much as $60,000. Second thing we want to talk about is increment cost. The increment cost is that amount of money that it costs to move everybody 1 step on the salary guide. So if you're on step 1 and you move to step 2, the increment is $500. So that's the increment cost of the district. There is no additional money added to the top of the guide when using this calculation. So from step 1 to step 2 would be $500, but somebody at the top of the guide would not incur any increment costs to the district. Right now, our increment cost to move everybody 1 step is approximately 2.45%. That amount is what we base our proposals on, and it's how we judge what the fairness of the district's offer is to us. Just as an aside, the negotiations team has met approximately 20 times beginning last year right after we had the election. We met throughout the course of the summer. We met before each of our proposed meetings with the Board of Education. We met after those meetings with the Board of Education, and we've done our due diligence in our preparation. We have also received assistance from our Uniserv office and our field rep, Colleen Neal. The NJEA is there to support us with anything we might need. Usually that comes from language clarifications, and in a lot of cases, how we crunch the numbers and come up with the different ideas that we have as far as proposals and the acceptance of board proposals is. Actual discussions with administration and the Board of Education started last winter. I had 2 informal meetings with Mr. Healy and Mr. Doring, our business administrator. There were no proposals made. There was only a discussion as to how we felt that the negotiations could go. Mr. Doring and Mr. Healy seemed to indicate that they didn't want to go through a long, drawn-out negotiation where one team starts with an extremely low offer, the other team starts with an extremely high offer, and you have to negotiate for long periods of time just to get in the same ballpark. However, Mr. Healy and Mr. Doring felt that a 3.0 increment would be a good raise for us. I indicated that the county average was slightly above 3.0. I think that both teams came away with an idea as to where the negotiations should occur in that 3% to 4% raise ratio. I think both sides came away from that meeting with an understanding as to where the negotiation should begin. One of the things that we talk about is county average. The county average for settlements can be based on any number of things. The first thing is you can get a county average that's just that. You take the average of all the settlements, and that's what you propose. The second method would be if there were some type of Chapter 78 relief involved. In our negotiations at this current time, we are not asking for any more Chapter 78 relief than we negotiated in our last settlement. We are, however, looking at the county average where there is no Chapter 78 relief. The approximate number for that in the 1920 school year was 3.45%, and for the 2021 school year, without any type of Chapter 78 relief, our number right now is 3.57. Following these meetings with Mr. Healy and Mr. Doring, I was asked to meet with members of the Board of Education. On February 5th, I met with Mrs. Palazzo, Mrs. Rhine, Mrs. Williams, and Mrs. Howe. They made a formal offer of 2%. It was a one-year deal. This was pre-COVID, mind you. It was a one-year deal for 2%. Now, what does a 2% raise look like when we have to actually apply it to our membership? First and foremost, nobody would move a step. You would remain on the same step you are on currently, and there would be a raise to that step. While it's not a freeze, it is essentially the same thing that we went through several years ago where we took a freeze. Only now we'd get a slight raise with that. This offer was unacceptable. Because it wasn't necessarily within the confines of our bargaining, I took the offer back to our negotiating team. We talked about it, and we came to the conclusion that we would not be accepting their offer of a one-year deal for 2%. On March 16th, as you well know, the district went remote. This creates a real different type of negotiating situation. As a team, we had discussed doing the whole thing virtually. We had talked about waiting till after the virtual learning portion of our school year was done. As time moved on, we realized that we were in this for the long haul. Our first official meeting with the Board of Education was April 2nd. We did this virtually. Traditionally, the first meeting is used for introductions of both teams. Also, we settled on ground rules, which we were able to do. Generally, proposals are not exchanged, but the Board of Education felt that they wanted to exchange their proposal, which we accepted. We were not prepared at that time to give them our proposal. We were going to give it to them on the second meeting. Their proposal was virtually similar to the meeting I had had with the Board of Education members on February 5th. Their proposal was a one-year deal, 2% salary increase with extracurriculars and salary guides for coaches and the like also being 2%. Supplemental teachers would receive a 2% raise. They would be increased to $58.29 an hour. And the educational interpreters would also be increased by 2%. This offer was a little unsettling because I had had informal conversations with Mr. Healy and Mr. Doring where we had talked about a 3%. It appears that now we're going back to the same old, they offer low, we have to go high. But it wasn't out of the realm that we could have a starting point where their offer was 2%. The plan at this point in time was to reconvene when we were back in person. But as you well know, that really hasn't occurred yet. On April 28, Tuesday, the day before the Board of Education was set to approve the 2020-2021 budget, I received two proposals from Mr. Healy and Mr. Doring. They were very similar to the original offer. The first proposal was a mix of 2.0% and 2.5% raises. It also included the reduction of one professional development day. We would go from 183 days to 182 days. However, that professional development day would return to the calendar in the following year, 2021, 2022. The second proposal was a little bit more clear. It was across the board 2.5% raises. Again, 2.5 for supplemental, 2.5 for interpreters, and also 2.5 for all of the stipends that people receive through the course of the year. I informed Mr. Healy that the process of approving any offer was not a decision that I could make unilaterally. We had a process that we had to follow. First and foremost, I would bring back the offer to our negotiating team. If they found it acceptable, they would then be required to sign a memorandum of agreement. When a memorandum of agreement was signed, we would have an information meeting for all of our membership, and then we would have a vote. The concept that we could get this done within a couple of days was not possible. Salary guides would still have to be drawn up, as well as stipends and everything else updated to match the 2.5% offer. In addition, one of the responsibilities of the negotiating team is to bring offers to the membership that they feel they have a chance to pass. A 2.5% offer would not pass with our membership. Remember that our increment cost is 2.45%. What a 2.5% raise would mean was one of two things. One, everybody would move a step, and there would be relatively no money left over to put at the top of the guide. Or two, we would have to take the 2.5% and spread it out evenly amongst everybody, again, with everybody not moving a step. This really was not a possibility because, again, we had been through this before. Our next meeting with the Board of Education was on July 21st. This was the second official meeting with them. Again, it was done virtually. We exchanged our proposal with the Board of Education. When we set forth our proposal, we knew that it would be primarily a money deal. There was, however, some language what we felt was necessary. We did have the language ready to go if we were to make a full 3-year proposal, but we chose 4 things that we felt were most important. The duration that we agreed on was still 1 year. We asked for a 3.8 increase in salaries and stipends across the board. Our 4 things were: 1, we wanted to take page 84 of our contract, which dealt with the working conditions for the Tier 2 paraprofessionals. We wanted to eliminate that page and have that language incorporated into the contract. We wanted paraprofessionals to have all the same protections: sick leaves, personal days, and bereavement days that every other member of our bargaining unit and really every member of the district was entitled to. The second thing was we wanted all work beyond contracted time to be vouchered. Third, we wanted all summer employees to be paid their per diem based on their salary during the school year. Finally, we wanted a Board of Education, Toms River Education Liaison Committee. We explained why we wanted these things, and that was the end of the meeting. On August 5th, we had our third, and as it turns out to be, our final meeting with the Board of Education. Again, it was virtual. The Board of Education gave us their response to our proposal, and there was a discussion about the proposal and any misunderstandings that may have occurred. Usually what happens is there's a question and answer period for clarification on proposals. The Board of Education made a monetary proposal, a counter to our 3.8. It was now 2.7. We were in the same situation as we were before. Either everybody would move a step and there would be a little amount of money left for the top of the guides, or we could take the money and distribute it evenly throughout. Nobody moving a step, but with people getting a small raise. The Board of Education rejected all changes to Tier 2 language. We had a discussion about the original intent of page 84 in the contract and outlined some of the issues with Tier 2s. We had a discussion how the 28.75 hours is determined, and after that, original documents were exchanged as to the origin of that particular amount. 2 days later, on August 7th, the board responded to our proposal. Again, we agreed to a duration of 1 year. Their monetary counter was 3% now. Their Tier 2 offer was to raise them from $78 a day to $81 a day. That's a 3.85% increase. As far as bereavement days was concerned, they proposed 3 days, not the 5 days that everybody else in the district is covered by. They proposed 3 days of bereavement for a parent-in-law, a spouse, or partner covered by New Jersey law, a child or stepchild. This did not cover bereavement days for grandparents, brothers or sisters, a son-in-law, a daughter-in-law, an aunt, an uncle, a niece, or a nephew. So again, we had the same situation. Who doesn't get to take a day off with pay to go to the funeral for a grandparent or a brother or a sister, or any of the other loved ones that we've listed? The language for bereavement should be the same for everybody in the district. It is Article 14A, Sections 2 and 3, that cover the bereavement days for everybody else in the staff. Our next meeting was set for August 26th, and communication between our lead negotiator, our UNISERV field rep, Colleen Neal, and the Board of Education attorney, Bruce Padula, continued up until the afternoon of August 26th. An hour before we were scheduled to meet with the Board of Education for our fourth meeting, the Board of Education sent an email to Colleen Neal and myself saying that unless we were willing to make movement, the meeting should be canceled. We had planned to meet with the negotiating team beforehand. We had a long discussion and said that going into a meeting where we were unwilling to move and the Board of Education was not going to move, that the meeting was unnecessary. At this point in time, the Board of Education declared impasse. As a side note, because primarily what we're talking about are money issues, the question arises, where does the money come from for a district that is in the financial straits that we are under the constraints of S2? We have several revenue streams that we felt that the district could use to help fund legitimate raises for the staff. First and foremost is breakage. I had mentioned breakage before as that difference between a veteran employee retiring, and a new employee being rehired or hired. I mentioned before that breakage was that number that's used when a veteran teacher retires and a new teacher is hired. The approximate value of this number is $2.6 million. When the Board of Ed budgeted for the 2020-2021 school year, the value of breakage at that point in time was $693,000. At the end of the school year, when all of the retirements and resignations came in, that number was closer to $2.6 million, a difference of $1.9 million. While breakage is never guaranteed to one side or the other, it's usually something that they can use to increase the salaries of the work. At one of the meetings, Mr. Padula said that that money is for other things. That money is not for other things. The amount of money from breakage that was budgeted was $693,000. There's now an excess of $1.9 million that can be used in the budget for the following school year. In addition, no buildings were opened from March 16th through the end of the school year. Limited bus runs, no sporting events, no subs, no class coverages. All of these represented a savings to the district that could be used to enhance a one-year deal. Finally, in January, when across the state there is Chapter 78 relief for everyone, there will be another group of monies that have become available to the district. Also, when you look back at the past 2 years, last year, the 1920 school year, 80 positions of teachers and ESPs was reduced. There was one administrative position that was eliminated. This year, the 2020-2021 school year, 36 teaching positions have been reduced. In addition, one administrative position was reduced. That's where we are today. So we're at impasse. So what does impasse mean? What impasse means is that we now call upon PERC to assign a mediator to sit both sides down to discuss their proposals, and PERC will make a recommendation. This is a non-binding recommendation. At this point in time, to find a mediator takes approximately 3 months. The Board of Ed and the Toms River Education Association still have the opportunity to sit and discuss proposals that will bring us towards a settlement. Both sides have the ability to amend their positions so that a settlement can be reached. We implore the Board of Ed to continue to negotiate in good faith so that a settlement can be reached in these most difficult of times. I thank you, and I wish you the best of luck, and I hope everyone has a great year.